Welcome to the KiDDS Biz Podcast, your go-to source for unlocking the secrets to success in orthodontics and pediatric dentistry. Each episode, we bring you expert guests who share innovative strategies and insider tips to help your practice thrive. Whether you're looking to enhance patient care, boost your marketing, or stay ahead of industry trends, we've got you covered. Join us on this exciting journey to elevate your practice and make a lasting impact in the lives of your young patients. Let's dive in.
Hey, Dr. Ashley,
Hi,
how are
Davin.
you?
I'm doing well. My final countdown, baby number 2,
Any
can
minute.
be here any day. So I'm happy we made it happen before.
I know. Well,
I'm in the
we
hospital.
wish you the best. It'll be here. I mean,
Thank you.
I feel like it's here so soon.
You're telling me. I was like, I have 9 months.
Yeah,
and
I
then
remember
the 9 months flew
when you
by.
first,
So here we are.
said that you were going to have your second baby, and then it was like, all of a sudden, here we are.
Yeah.
Hey, so we've got Alex, an orthodontist out in Hawaii, that is our guest today. So, Alex, say hey to everybody.
Hey, everyone. How's it going?
Well, I'm super excited to have Alex Virga here. He is one of my co-residents from orthodontic residency. And honestly, I really, I always feel like you should pay homage to the people that were in your life for a season and you really learn from. And Alex is one of those people for me. I feel like he was very instrumental in making me step outside of my comfort zone, telling people what I want and going for it. I remember some of the first few conferences we went to, I would like hide in the bathroom. We'd be the only residents there. And he's like we'll get into it, but we were trying to start a business together. And Alex is, the hustler, just goes out and like asks for what we want. And I'm like hiding in the bathroom, feeling so uncomfortable. And that was a great learning lesson for me because now here I work with a ton of orthodontic companies and you gave me the confidence to ask for what I want and look at how I'm not in your shadow anymore.
Wow.
So, but yeah. So Alex was very instrumental in my life. He's a very, very smart dude. He honestly shouldn't be in orthodontics because he's so analytically, I don't know, you're next level. But
I work very hard, but
Yes.
I love what I do, and I think that's a big part of what we're going to talk today about this COO and delegation, and really focusing on what makes you tick and getting rid of some of the things that could potentially be holding you back.
Sure.
yeah, so kind of a little bit of a backstory for us and for our listeners is Alex and I were in residency together, and this was kind of during the time that Smile Direct Club was coming out. And we were a little uncertain about like a traditional brick and mortar dental office. Like, were those going to survive? And so, we kind of wanted to push the entrepreneurial envelope and be like, okay, what can we do that's outside the box? That's kind of like threatening the mold and that sort of thing. So we had this business that we started, OrthoClear, and it was like a clear aligner business. That here, Alex, I'm like talking. Say a little bit of what OrthoClear was.
So, what we saw was that people were trying to skip the orthodontist because it was perceived as, cheaper, and they weren't really seeing the value in orthodontics that we felt that they should have been. And we said, well, this is just a big distribution problem. Orthodontists require referrals from these dentists. How do you get to the people at a time where it mattered? Most of these people getting Smile Direct Club, a lot of them had dentists. The people who didn't obviously were ending up in a bad spot. But we said, if we can maybe get to the dentist, we can, create a business model that works really, really well. So our goal there was to see, let's talk to the dentist, let's run some numbers. Invisalign, clear aligner is very low productivity item for the dentist because they don't have the knowledge behind it. So they tend to have a lot more refinements. They tend to oversee the patients. They lose all the efficiency, and they don't do enough of it. So their economies of scale were really, really low. So we were trying to just run these numbers and see, is there a way we can work with the general dentist so they can essentially offer an orthodontic quality level of care through their practice by using kind of the remote orthodontist. And I've seen a lot of other people kind of taking on this model. The real issue.
There's another company, Two Front. I've never met her personally, but it's funny because her business model is exactly what we were doing, and we were probably trying to start it at the same time.
Yeah, and the real issue we came down to was there's just not that much meat on the bones. And Ashley and I are both perfectionists. We really like to do a really good job, and I don't like the race to the bottom where you're just trying to cut down fees to try feed everybody, right? So that's kind of where we both ended up back in the traditional field of orthodontics. Obviously, we do things a little bit different than the average person, but I always think you got to fail forward and try new things, explore, ask questions. I'm so proud of Ashley to see all the things that she's done. My whole life philosophy is that life expands and contracts in proportion to one's courage. So you just, you got to fail forward. You got to be uncomfortable doing things that you've never done before and realize that nobody is an expert when they start anything. I was presenting to some middle schoolers yesterday at the school, and I was asking them, I said, how many of you guys play sports? And they raised their hand. How many of you think that you're really good at your sports? And this one kid's, I'm the best wrestler in the state. And he said, well, do you remember there was a time before you ever wrestled anybody? And he was like, yeah. And I said, well, you got to think about that with your entire life, because that is a huge part of your identity today, but you have to try something new to even get to this point. So imagine your career, everything else. What is that? What else is like that? You have to do new things.
That's really great perspective. Alex, before we get too far into this, I kind of want to know a little bit about you. I think probably our listeners do. I know you and Ashley go way back. But just if you wouldn't mind kind of just sharing a little bio, where you're from, what you're doing, where do you practice now, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So my backstory is, if we go all the way back, I was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan, born to some South African immigrants. So my parents came to the United States for school at University of Michigan. My mom did her postdoc fellowship in human molecular genetics there, and my dad did his MBA at the University of Michigan. So my dad's background also has a degree in electrical engineering. And I was so confused growing up because I was like, I have no idea what I want to do with this knowledge. I love science. Do I want to go be like a physician? But I love the business side. Nothing kind of made sense. And I ended up going to college at the University of Central Florida. One of my good buddies, his dad was an endodontist. And I had done the first year of pre-med. Then I switched over to business. And I was like, I'm lost. I have no idea what I want to do. And went and shadowed his dad. Endodontics seemed really cool. Started shadowing all of his dad's friends.
You thought endodontics was really cool.
Well, I was just, guy owned his business.
Yeah.
Had a sick house on the lake. I was, in a business.
You liked the lifestyle.
Yeah, it was everything. It was cool. And then I shadowed the periodontist, the endodontist, or the orthodontist, the pediatric dentist. Ortho seemed the most appealing, but obviously I knew it was not a guaranteed thing. And dentistry was kind of the first thing that I said, I can satisfy the medical desire, the engineering desire, the whole goal of building things and not be stuck working in some
great
hospital.
So very, good genetics there in terms of being smart. So then from Central Florida, where did you go? And I know you're in Hawaii now, but how did you get there?
Yep. So, I moved to Florida in high school and I hated the cold without purpose. Snowboarding was awesome, but day-to-day living up north, I just wasn't for me. So when I moved to Florida, it just opened the whole switch in my brain. And, my quality of my life increased dramatically. And from there, I got this idea I was going to move to Hawaii one day. From the time I was in high school, it was really, really strange. Went to Central Florida for college, went to Nova Southeastern for dental school. I was the president of my class in dental school. I was the president of the entire student government, won a bunch of awards doing that, and then went to a residency with Ashley. And
so he's missing the fact. This is a little fun fact. I convinced him that he was going to move to California before this whole Hawaii thing happened. And we were going to do this startup out of my house.
OrthoClear.
But yes, this is our business model.
OrthoClear.
Yes,
okay.
OrthoClear. And it was impossible to get a job in California when we graduated. So when we finally made the realization that both him and I were not going to work in Southern California and make money, we both worked for the same DSO. But is that what initially brought you to Hawaii though? Was working at this DSO, Gentle Dental?
Well, so I had already shipped all of my stuff to Ashley's
my house. Yeah. Yeah.
And
I think I still have, I'm actually sitting right next to your love sack. I still have some of Alex's stuff.
Yeah. Still going well. But I shipped all my stuff there. I was signed up to take rebs and all these things. And
yeah.
And then the opportunity arose. Ashley didn't even have a job yet.
No.
So I was like, I can't even get a job because I don't have the license. Ashley was going to get a job. I had shipped all my stuff, and then Hawaii accepted 8X, which I'd taken in Florida. I was like, I'll just go do this for 6 months. It was, it was supposed to be really great pay and all this type of stuff. And then Ashley found the job at the same company, and we both, worked with kind of some of the same people, which was funny. And then COVID hit, and it just changed everything.
Yeah. And then that's really where we kind of went our separate ways. Was COVID happened. It was lockdown. It was clear he's not leaving Hawaii anytime soon. And I think we were both like really ready to, I think we weren't proud of where we were working, and we were really ready to like make that jump for ourselves and start creating our like the career path that we're happy and confident about. So here we are today, which I'm super excited. Alex has done some really impressive things. We both have COOs, but I feel like it's going to be a very unique conversation. Alex has had multiple offices. We're a solo practice right now. Davin, I just found out, was a COO for Wild Smiles for the longest time. So it'll definitely be a unique conversation. But I kind of want to get into like, why do people even hire a COO? Because, of course, that is a lofty salary compensation. So that's cutting out of what you're going to take home at the end of the day. And so, Alex, where did you learn about like what a COO was? Because this is obviously not, I've never taken any business classes. Where did you even learn about what that role was and that you wanted to hire for that position?
Yeah. So, first for the listeners, what a COO is, if you don't know, is a chief operating officer, right? So they're in charge of all the operations for your business. And it's going to be different depending on what your business is, what stage your business is. But, and there's different times when you should probably consider getting one. I think I first learned about it from Bryce, one of our other co-residents. One of his friends had a COO, and I kind of like looked into it a little bit more, and it just made a lot of sense to me. As far as
or Amanda Floyd, I feel like she made the name for COOs.
Yeah. So I think, Amanda Floyd, Fishbine Fundamentals, all that good stuff. Bryce had gone to that program our first year of residency, and he came back all wide-eyed. I remember talking to him about all the things that they were doing there. And, it didn't cross my mind at that point, obviously, to say I need a COO out the gate, but it just seemed like a natural progression. My dad was also an executive for Ford Motor Company for a long time. So I was kind of familiar with corporate structures and kind of the different operations and delegations and who does what at these big scale companies. Like I said, I did business for a year in college too. So it was like a path that I really considered. But it probably wasn't until, for me at least, until I was at a point in the practice where I felt I couldn't execute at the level that I wanted to, that we needed one, right? And this goes back to, for your practice, when do you need a COO, right? Initially, you're probably not going to have the funds to do it unless you're willing to really delay your life cycle. We were, for Maui, 2023 in August was the fire in Lahaina. That year, my offices had grown about 30%, for the year. And that's including the fire, the office burning down. So we were growing like wildfire that year.
This was before or after you hired Eric?
So I hired him actually the day after the fire.
You're like in panic mode.
No. We were negotiating with him for like months.
Oh, okay.
We had sent out the contract, and it was the day before the fire we sent him the contract, and then the next day, like the whole island was shut down.
Were you terrified that you weren't going to have a whole like revenue stream from one of your offices, and now we're going to pay this guy a lofty
it was like, do we still do this? And I mean, to me, it was more of like a gut decision of, yes, I think it makes sense, right? And so, August 2023, fire burns down. We still hired Eric. He came out here in November. We closed out that year. So he didn't really do anything 2023, but the Maui offices were still up about 30% that year.
right.
including the fire. And then 2024, a full year with him here, we still grew about 13% on top of that.
Nice.
So for me, it was really growth. I look at what do I need to be doing as the visionary for the practice, as the point of contact for the patient to have the best experience. Currently, I'm a solo doctor practice on Maui. I have 2 locations out here. That third location was the Lahaina location that burned down. And I knew that I would grow more if I could have someone at a high level helping me implement my vision.
That's
right? Whether that was
exactly
marketing,
how I felt.
whether that is operations, onboarding, training, and this is where it depends on the size of your company. There are offices with multiple practices that don't have a COO, but they have regional managers and things like that that help do this. That COO needs to be that next position underneath you that understands where you currently want the vision to go, helping with the your year plan, 3-year plan, 5-year plan, 10-year plan, on board with the vision of the company and helping you execute that vision while you're busy.
I've got a question to kind of go back. You mentioned like when you weren't able to operate the business in the way that you wanted to, or you were talking just kind of about your goals. What were some of the benchmarks that you were using? And Ashley, maybe
where were you guys at on like collections?
I guess I would also ask
Eric?
though, like, were you using collections benchmark? Like, what were there? Like, what benchmarks were you even using? Because like I think what you're talking about, Alex, for me goes beyond just like some of the measurements of the business, and it goes into kind of like where you are as a leader of the business. And so what were some of those things? And maybe they work. I mean, I think collections is clearly something you should be looking at, but I would be interested to know, how did you know it's time now?
It was a bandwidth issue. I look at, I don't think anyone is really that great of a multitasker. And when you are being pulled all sorts of different ways and you're spending your weekends working on the business, which can be a side effect of growth, right? You're just expanding at a level that, and like I mentioned earlier, I'm a perfectionist. I want to give 100% at everything I'm doing and deliver a quality product. I was at a point where I needed someone that I could trust to delegate high-level tasks to. As far as benchmarks go, I'm a very analytical person where I have crazy Excel sheets that document everything. So what am I tracking? I'm tracking everything. I'm tracking number of new patients scheduled in the month. I'm tracking conversion rates. I'm tracking the production, the collection, the trailing metrics of everything. I'm looking at referrals. I'm looking at all these different things. My first point for Eric when he came here was really SOPs, standard operating protocols, because I wanted, as the doctor, right, especially with the fire, you have all these people leaving the island and all these types of things. I want to make it easy to replace people because people are always going to be coming and going, right?
And that's the new workforce anyway.
Yeah, and you want to be able to hire and train these people at a level where you're giving them the best and it's not you failing them with your onboarding, right? So you got to be able to communicate your values, your mission, the actual role, what the expectations are. How could you expect yourself when you're seeing patients to give the patient 100% and be able to oversee your front desk, your treatment coordinator, all these people, and be able to determine whether or not they're executing your vision in the background? You'd be multitasking to a level where you can't do it. When your practice is slow in the beginning, right? You don't have money, but you have time. So you kind of have the ability to go and train the staff over here and talk to the front and talk to the treatment coordinator and talk to the marketing person and all these types of things. But once you get to a certain level, you want to do that after hours, you want to do it on the weekend. To me, there's no question the business is going to perform better if someone's working on the business during the work week than me and
Dr. Ashley, did you?
And I think my story is a little bit different than Alex's, just because, the elephant in the room is that I'm a female. And, I've tried to push off having kids for a long time, but we're nearing that biological clock. So for me, I think I read, Alex and I were both doing HIP for a period of time. And so we were like reading their books. And one was like about hiring a COO and scalability and all these things. And they had mentioned the benchmark of when you're at 3 million, you can afford to hire a COO. And I honestly do stand by that. We hired a COO far before we reached the 3 million mark. And that is because I was willing to sacrifice my paycheck for peace of mind when I was going into having my first child. So I think I hired Melinda. I think maybe it was like a month before I went on maternity leave the very first time. And we're a solo practice. I had an office manager. But really, she's the financial coordinator. She's the treatment coordinator. She has so many hats that she can't fulfill all of them. And so that leadership role, and there was a lot of girl drama going on in the office. I was very, very stressed to leave. And so for me, I was willing to sacrifice some of my lifestyle, my paycheck, to have peace of mind that my office was going to flourish even while I was gone. Because I remember being at Women in Orthodontics conference once, and this woman was like presenting her like growth over the years, and she had 3 drops in 3 different years, and she's like, this is when I had 3 children. And for me, I was not willing to compromise that. We were a startup a year and a half when I went into my first maternity leave, and we have been growing exponentially as a startup. I think our growth last year was 27% or something. So we're doing really well, but I only work in the office 2 days a week. So I need someone working on the business and overseeing our pediatric division while I'm not there, because I was in the office prior to maternity leave every day working on the business. And, for me, I would rather value having a little bit more time home with my kids while they're small than driving my Range Rover or G-Wagon, which I will get.
I think that's a really great point, because so many people, I think, try to analyze it too much to the point of like, well, I have to achieve these certain things, rather than understanding the lifestyle piece.
Yeah, it's your priorities. What's important to you at that moment in time. And for me, I've always been business first, and my practice is my first baby. But I'm, being a mother is also the most important job you can ever have. And, I really feel like people are like, oh, you can never be good at all of it at the same time. But because I am a great delegator, I really do feel like I'm thriving in my motherhood and I'm thriving in my business. And that's because I am delegating and I'm not burning myself out. I think before I hired a COO, I was so burnt out with the drama, with the HR, with everything. I was just like drowning. And then I was about to be entering motherhood, and I was just like, I don't think I could be a business owner. Like, this is not for me. But like Alex said, it's a bandwidth problem. There's not enough of you to go around. And so hiring a COO was the best decision for me for just peace of mind and knowing that my business is still growing even when I'm not physically in the office every day.
Yeah, I think touching on what you're talking about there is you need that high level leadership you can trust, because if you are at a point in your business where you're just getting beat up every day and you feel like you're all alone,
yes,
that's not sustainable, right?
I think that's the biggest thing, Alex, is I don't feel like I'm on an island by myself anymore. Yeah. And I felt like I don't feel like I'm on an island. I can text someone that has high level thinking and be like, this is the problem. I need you. I'm not in the office today. You need to problem solve this. And knowing that they're capable of it. Yeah. That peace of mind is priceless to me.
And what we're doing here is buying back our time.
Yes.
Right? Because like I said, you're either going to start expanding into your nights and weekends, and then you're going to max out and you're going to be stuck. Or you're going to bring on someone at a high level who's going to be doing beyond what you could do in those nights and weekends full time and continue to grow the business.
The COO is a really unique role within a business, because it's the stopgap between the visionary or the founder, and the rest of the company. And so the COO has to be able to see a bigger vision and understand a bigger vision, but then also get into the minutia and the details that make the business run every day. So as you guys were talking about, now we've talked about a little bit about how you got to the point where you recognized you needed it for whatever reason, how then did you determine the person or the personality, or where did you go to start finding the COO? Because you're handing over big swaths of the operation of the business to somebody that you have to trust. So right. I guess for both of you, where did you find that person and what were you looking for?
Yeah, so for me, I was really lucky because the second I realized I needed one, I already knew the person for the job. So my childhood best friend was busy running other businesses. He was working at for a family office, kind of investment group. And I had been talking to him about the business and the problems at the business since I bought the business. So I had slowly kind of been planting that seed in his head. And I brought him out to AAO in, I think, the May of 2023. He kind of saw what was going on. And, from there, we kind of worked on some negotiations. But, looking for the right person, there's going to be so many different ways. For me, the shortcut was trust. Bringing someone in that I know is capable and I can trust to do that. But that lacked in experience, which is a pro and a con, because if they don't have the experience, there's going to be a latency period where they have to get up to speed. In one end, that's actually really valuable because you can look at everything from a first principles approach and rebuild everything from the ground up your way. You bring someone with experience, how much people have associate doctors, all these things. Sometimes it can be really difficult to change people's old habits or perception that they know better. So for me, I was very lucky because I just knew the guy from the job from the beginning, and I was lucky enough to make it happen. And the bonus of it is now one of my best friends.
There you go. Well, and Dr. Ashley, you took
incredibly
kind
lucky.
of hired. So yours, Alex, his name's Eric, and he's from outside of the industry.
Eric, yeah.
And Dr. Ashley, you hired someone from kind of within, had been in orthodontics before.
Within, yes. Yes. You're like most orthodontic and pediatric dental practices, you're probably struggling with oral hygiene compliance, observation conversions, and an increase of shoppers, especially among young patients and their families. In my practice, Wild Smiles makes converting observation and phase 1 patients easy. Young patients and their shopping families value a personalized experience. When I first added Wild Smiles to my practice, they made inventory and reordering easy, and they even led our team through simple instructions on integrating Wild Smiles into our existing systems. So we saw an immediate success. Grow your early orthodontic patient population with Wild Smiles to combat boring traditional braces and expensive phase 1 aligners. Check out wildsmilebraces.com/doctors to choose the customizable easy start kit that's right for your practice. Mention code KiDDS to save 10% off your first order. Yeah, so shout out to my Invisalign rep. I kind of feel bad because I'm not with Align anymore, but he was a fantastic Invisalign rep. And he, always wants to come in and talk. And he was like, what are you really struggling with going into your maternity leave? And I just said HR. I'm like, if you can find me someone that I can trust and that can help me run this business, well, I'm not going to be here day to day. Like, that is my biggest stress right now. And so, he took off his rep hat and came in as a friend, which I really appreciate. And he's like, well, I actually know of a COO at a different office that is looking for different opportunities. I think that she was promised a piece of the pie for a long time, and it just never happened for her. And so she was looking for a new opportunity where she can grow and help build that practice up. So we really aligned. It was like right before I spoke at Orthopreneurs, I brought her. I think that was honestly the very first week that she started with us. So I think I was 36 weeks with my first pregnancy. And so, going back to what Alex said, I definitely think that even if they have experience, there's a latency period because she still doesn't know exactly how I would think. And so I think one of the biggest things for me as we continue to work together, because it's really only been less than a year and a half that I've had her, is getting to the point where I don't have to approve everything. She can think for me and respond in a way that I would respond. and protect my time a little bit more in that way. Whereas I am a perfectionist, just like Alex. And if she were to just do it right off the bat without my approval, I'd probably get upset. Like, oh, this is not my brand. This is not my messaging, my tone, so I'm equally a perfectionist and very protective of our brand and the aesthetics and that sort of thing. So I think it's taking her some time to feeling comfortable and knowing exactly how to answer for me.
I think that's a great point, because in my experience, I got brought on, we called it, the role was national director at the time, 20 years ago. Okay. And I think that was just because there was not a assumption that the business was big enough by whatever measurement to have a COO. But I think that was the hardest from the person coming in as the COO perspective. That was one of actually the hardest things that we struggled with, Dr. Stevens and myself, with what actually were the expectations of this person that was kind of coming in. And, I viewed my role very much as, I got your vision, I'm here to implement it. And there was a lot of communication and a lot of meetings and a lot of trying to make sure that we're understanding, and I'm trying to understand his vision so that I can implement the vision. And then over time, you start to take ownership of that vision, and the visionary that, in your case is the orthodontist that's running the business, starts to really trust the instincts of this person. So for you guys, what are the expectations that you have of the COO? And then has that changed from the time that you hired them until now, or is it kind of the same?
What month did you hire Eric at? Because I kind of feel like we brought on our COs around very similar times.
November of 2023.
Okay. And then mine was August. So like 2 months before. So we're really kind of at the same stage of having a COO. Do you feel like, how does that relationship work between you and Eric? Do you feel like are you still approving everything, or where do you feel like you're at?
Yeah. So, initially, I want to back up to, if you're going to bring on a COO, right, you better have a plan for them. So I think it's really important to be able to look at your business from 30,000 feet and say, what is the goal here? And then once you figure out what the business needs, it's a lot easier to figure out how you're going to onboard them, because this is a huge order of operations problem. For me, it was probably a little bit different than you, because I was bringing someone in from the outside of orthodontics. So they didn't understand a lot of the nuances, but they understand business, right? So for me, I knew what we were going to be working on, which was going to be a lot of marketing and SOPs, these types of things, which is a great entry point for someone, because they're going to learn all of that in the process, right? So the first 6 months for me was probably twice the amount of work as normal, because I wasn't only doing my work, I was now having to teach someone else exactly how to do all the things that I was no longer going to be focused on. And of course, you bring someone on, you're saying, well, it's because I want to execute HIP and I want to do all these things properly. You're bringing on all these new projects to the table that you've never done as well. So you end up in this kind of zone of you're exploring new territory together as well. But my expectations today are different than they were in the very beginning. Today it's more of an full-on operational standpoint from top to bottom, right? They're doing a little bit of making sure the HR is there. If we're hiring somebody, we're combing through the SOPs and making sure that the next person we hire is going to be better than the last one, that we've given them more effort and tools to be successful than the previous version. We did office renovations. We've done all sorts of little, we just changed our software, and on the back end, there's all these financial problems. So all the high level stuff that typically I would be pulled away for, that's kind of their first, instinct, is protect my time on things that later on, of course, bring me in the loop if there's ever something you're over your head on. And typically those are like Friday, which are admin day activities, or even sometimes on the weekend. But the real goal is to make sure that the business as an engine, right, all the gears are spinning and they're all lubricated, right? And then together we're going to pick which gears are we going to be changing, and we're probably going to break the engine for a little bit and be working on the engine together. But overall, your job is to make sure that this whole machine is running and I can focus on the patients and give them the best possible experience. Because my time is actually more valuable if I'm chatting to mom and educating her on the case and why it was such a good idea to see this underbite at age 7, and then she goes and tells all of her friends, than it is for me to be like pulled aside to talk to this, the unemployment insurance or something, like that.
Yeah, I think the number one takeaway is protecting our time, because there are a million tabs open in my brain at all times, and I cannot be tied down to the small little details that are someone else can figure out for me. And so that's kind of, and then, going back to where I initially learned about what a COO was, and then that book by HIP, I want to just kind of read real quick for those that have this is their first time even thinking about, oh, should I hire a COO? So I just want to read this. The COO will assist in development and implementation of strategic long-term goals and provide fiscal management that will include analysis, forecasting, budgetary responsibilities, contract negotiations. The individual will also review metrics and review revenue cycle performance, recommend and implement strategies for improvement and growth. This vital leadership role will drive results and improve the overall efficiency and scalability of the company, and will report to the owner / managing orthodontist. And I feel like that's just very clearly stated out of the job description. And so, when you're kind of taking a look at hierarchy, the orthodontist is always at the top, but the COO really needs to be in alignment with your vision and be right under you. And eventually be able to think like you and make decisions for you to protect your time.
One of the things that I just wrote down here, which I think is very important to me, is ensuring consistent patient experience and quality of care, right? That consistency. A business always has changes. How do you have someone at the top who is really focused on making sure that all those gears are moving and you have that consistency? If you think about any huge company, if you think about you go to Chipotle or something, right? You're going to have consistency, right? And I think small businesses in America are the ones, because we tend to understaff, when you have sudden change, we always describe it as we're like an F1 car that offers this amazing product and service. And we don't want to treat it where the bolt is not on, the wheel's just ready to fly off while you're going 200 miles an hour, right? We want to build consistency, reliability, making sure that things are not going to be disruptive under little changes, right? And that's very, very difficult to do when you're not only a perfectionist, right? Because we're very idealistic in our thinking. We say, well, if it's built like this, it should just work. There's the people element to all this. And that is very, very difficult to manage when you're focusing on it.
Have either of you read the book, The E-Myth? Okay. It's an older book, but it's a great.
Of course, Alex has.
It's a great one for exactly what you're talking about, Alex. I mean, it how do you replicate yourself, even in a small business, when we don't always think that that's kind of an important thing, but no matter how small the business is, that's super important.
And something I will say nowadays, which is incredible, right, is all the tasks you want to replicate yourself for, we almost don't have any excuse anymore, because as we do those tasks on our computer, we can record the screen, we can submit that to AI, we can have it make an SOP based off that, and we can save the video to give to the relevant person who's going to be taking over the task. So it's never been easier to show people exactly how you operate and how you think, and document that in long form. This is where, the market is changing, the hiring it is more difficult from a quality standpoint kind of across the board, because people have different choices for their time nowadays. But we can be really strategic about how do we ensure that we provide people the tools necessary to be successful within our practice and maximize the chance that they will stay with us.
Yeah, I definitely feel like Alex, you're super knowledgeable. I will have you on again in the future just to talk about like automating processes in our business with AI as we continue to grow. Cause I know that, Alex, I feel like, again, I have all of these huge visions and plans for me and great ideas. And then, when it comes to implementing them, that's kind of where I fall off the wagon. Cause
that's what you have a COO for.
Yes. And this is why I partnered with you. I always wanted a podcast. I could talk all day. And I find it very like fun and interesting. I learn so much from other people. I feel like that's the best way of like growing my business is talking to other people and learning how other people are doing things. But I would have never done it if we didn't partner together and, doing it together. So I can't remember where I was going off with that little pregnancy break.
Thank you. Same here. I do have a question about the COO and meetings. So and Alex, we'll start with you and then Ashley chime in. Do you guys have a cadence in terms of how often you meet with your COO? And then follow up to that, what do you meet about and what does that agenda look like?
So my experience here is going to be very different probably than almost everyone else because, this is my really, really good friend. I mean, he's coming to my house at 6:30 every morning and we're going to the gym for an hour before we end up at the office. So, and then on the week, I mean, we are constantly talking about the business. And, one of the things with the COO is if it frees up your time and allows you to do more things, you get to focus on other revenue streams. So we've created other businesses together so I can help him meet his future goals as well. And I think that's an important thing for any COO is this is probably going to be a highly motivated individual. You have to make sure that your plans and your future paints a vision in their head that they want to be a part of. Yeah. Right? If you look at Ashley, her COO was with another group and she left because she felt like she missed out and offered more value than ended up being compensated for. So,
and she actually took a paycheck. I'll get into that too, because I think that that's important. People don't understand, like, how do I entice or like, I'm a nobody right now, but what's your 10-year plan? And I feel like Alex was really instrumental when I did hire the COO of like, okay, what do I pay them? Okay, well, in 10 years, it's going to be different than what I could pay them now and based on our goals and our projections. So honestly, hiring the COO was like a crash course in like setting our business vision for the next 10 years. Like I want to no longer own this practice and be an orthodontist in 10 years. I have other goals for myself. And sitting down and really structuring out, okay, she's going to make this at this time point. And how do I bring someone in when I'm small and they're taking a pay cut, but they believe in where I'm going?
Yeah, they believe in the visionary and the vision and what you have to offer. And I think this is where you got to sell the dream to people, right? And if they understand that your path to the goal is realistic, then they want to be a part of the journey. And, kind of back to the question, we're talking about business all the time, so we don't necessarily have the formal meetings. And we've talked about doing all of the kind of structured meetings and stuff like that, which we do with the rest of the team. We'll sit down at increments. We look at certain KPIs every single month. We have our huddles every, morning where we'll touch on certain touch points. Of course, we want to be better at the organization of that all the time, but ours is a little bit informal because we're more talking about the priorities for today. And I'm a big checklist guy. So what I do is I print out the month's calendar every single month. And then as things pop up, I can put it on this month printed calendar. So I can look at it at a month view, but then I also have a weekly view where it's like every single day and a line item. And I have one for me and the COO. And every day at the end of the day, we go through our kind of master to-do list and we'll kind of hierarchy it out and say, what is the most important thing for us to work on? And then there's my list, the things that only I can do, his list, the things like over the next couple of days we want him to be focusing on. And then he has a specific column with the things that he's going to need my time to really take it.
So you're meeting with him. So you're having informal meetings because you guys are working out, hanging out just as friends, but also talking about the business. Your COO joins the morning huddle.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, he's at the office all day with me, so he's in. But
he's in the morning huddle with your like clinical staff. Okay, and then you have a formal meeting with him at the end of the day where you guys are going over a checklist and to-do list about what you did today and what you want to do over the next few days, weeks, months ahead?
Yeah, it's not so much a recap of like, what did we get done today? It's more of what are the most important things for us to focus? Because there's always things being thrown at you. I heard something the other day, which I thought was really interesting, where email is essentially a public to-do list for your time, right? So the amount of emails that come in, his list could completely be changed based off just what hammered us that day, and, I basically want to look at it as, what do we currently think? At the end of the day, we drive to work together. So he's kind of trapped there with me until we leave. I can sit down with that list and make sure that we have a good idea of what needs to be done the next day. But like I said, we have a very different relationship than most people.
Alex is the type too. He cannot shut off work. Even his social time, he's talking about work. So I can only imagine.
So Dr. Stevens and I have a similar relationship in terms of we are friends. And now there's a larger age difference between the two of us than there is between you and Eric, I'm guessing, because he's 30 years older than me. But we do have a friendship that comes into play that goes beyond the boundaries of the office. And so I can relate to what you're talking about, because like early on in the business, we would go on runs together. We would go to the gym. And so I can totally relate to what you're talking about.
Yeah. I think it also it goes back to hiring the right person, right? And the COO, you want someone who's highly motivated. So it's not like I'm just hanging out with my friend and yapping about business to him, and he's just like, turn it off. He is actually more motivated to get to the next level than I am, because he has great plans for himself, right? So I want to make sure that I can provide a business that helps everyone achieve their goals within it. And in the process, of course, you're going to win.
I will mention it. It takes a certain amount of humility on the part of the business owner, and in your case, obviously, for both of you, the orthodontist, to actually recognize that, number one, you can't do it all, and number two, you're not always the smartest person in the office, and number three, that there's someone else that's going to be making, you're going to be investing in, and I think that we would be remiss if we didn't at least touch on the fact that there is some humility that has to exist within that. Would you agree with that or no?
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think it goes back to what Alex said. Like, I think being a sole practitioner, you feel like you're on an island. And I felt that way for a really long time. Like, yes, you have an office manager, but you're still on an island. And so I really feel like, unless you're in a group practice or you have that higher level thinking involved in having the same master plans and goals, you're going to always feel like you're on an island. So the day-to-day that's going to bring you down with, like, there's always going to be a patient that's upset about something. There's always going to be an insurance bill that didn't get paid, or there's always going to be something. And it's nice to have someone on your same wavelength to discuss it with and not feel being beaten down by yourself. So it kind of goes back to that burnout for me. I think it's very valuable to prevent burnout by having someone that is aligned and that is not your partner at home. I talk to Tyler, my husband, all the time, but I don't want to be bringing home negativities from work all the time. Sure, he wants to help and he wants to be there, but I want to protect my time at home with my family as well.
I think the thing to think about with the business too is that you will go the farthest if you can build the most people up, right? So the more you can build up your front, the more you can build up your TC, the more you can build up your clinical staff, the better the team you're going to have on your side. And the farther that team's going to go. There's been nothing. If I had to do one thing from the start all over again, it was treating my team with humility, treating them like family, making sure they know that you care about them and their kids. I think a secret weapon is really showing these people, because they expect any job to pay them, right? That's an entitlement of the job. But when you show these people that you care about them and you care about their kids and all these types of things, then now you have a different level of support for them. And that doesn't mean, anything crazy. It just means asking questions, taking the time to do so. And if you have more if your brain is in 1,000 places when you get to the office, how are you going to be able to dig a little bit deeper with your staff? You're going to be too scrambled in the head to be able to focus on those things. And that will translate with patience. It'll translate with everything. The more you can protect your time and put yourself in a position where you can focus on what's actually going to matter, the further you're going to go. And that all starts with having a really good team.
So I have a question for both of you, because Ashley, you mentioned it a minute ago. You mentioned the term office manager. So I think everybody listening for sure would say that they understand the concept of an office manager. What's the difference between an office manager and a COO?
Alex, do you want to?
Yes.
Do you have office manager? I mean, you have multiple offices.
Office manager. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, my office is also, it's kind of different because I use a lot of technology to automate processes, and my COO kind of takes the role of the office manager as well. I have kind of a tier where it's me, my office manager, and then my TC, who started with me from the ground up. She kind of is the next tier down that helps hire, train, do all those types of things. So, I think the big difference as far as an office manager versus COO really comes down to the systems, the trust that you can have, and the level of communication.
And the vision of growth, wanting to expand, wanting to...
The communication, I think, is really important, because an office manager can understand everything and can maybe do a lot of the administrative stuff under the radar. But I think, to me, the real thing that I see with the COO is someone who knows how to manage people, communicate with people, and do that in a humane way, right? Not everyone has that communication skill and skill set where they know how to ensure that the entire engine is running. I look at the office manager as a piece of the engine, whereas the COO is working on the engine with it.
That was a great answer. My first employee was my office manager. I hired for an office manager because that's what I thought I needed. And, probably in retrospect, I probably don't need an office manager, but that's what she was hired for. So I'm not going to take away any titles. But it's definitely more administrative. She's my TC. She's my financial coordinator. And then she's doing small day-to-days. So my goal is not just one office. So there's going to need to be, the COO is going to be traveling to multiple offices on different days. So there needs to be a leader within that office, within those four walls. And so that's what I see the office manager as being is, she's the first, if someone's texting and going to be late, they're not texting my COO that, they're texting the office manager, because she's running the schedule and she's got to prepare for the huddle and that sort of thing. So I think it's just a level of hierarchy within the office.
And I think when you first hire a COO, they're going to be working in the business and on a bunch of these tasks. But the real goal is, if you're going to pay someone at a COO rate, you really want them working on the business, right? Making sure that the business itself is running well, the business itself is growing, identifying what areas of the business need attention, and helping create systems or operations or accountability to make sure that those things are being done correctly. There's always going to be things that they get roped into doing, but the more you're paying them, you have to look at all these jobs. What is the going rate for it? If I have my COO doing some role that you could pay someone a fraction of the amount to do it, that is a highly inefficient way of running your business. You want them working on high level tasks. Yeah, I think it's more of a structural thing, right? When you're hiring for that COO role, you want them to be someone who's working on the business, not necessarily within the business. Don't hire a COO to do the jobs of, 3 other people that you could just hire to do those jobs, right? Get the COO who can help make sure that those jobs, if someone's out, of course, fill in, rebuild the whole, sharpen the sword, make the SOP for that better, help train the new person, but don't expect them to get stuck in that role. They really should be at a high level, helping you manage those visionary, executing on your visions, essentially.
Alex, you've brought up SOPs a couple times, and I know that, probably most people here kind of know the idea behind what that is, but I think sometimes, and you say you're using technology, and I know, Ashley, you mentioned we should have a whole other conversation about this, but I do have
absolutely,
a quick
Alex
question.
is so knowledgeable.
So it's kind of unrelated but how detailed are your SOPs? Because I think if you have a COO and that's one of their roles, to make sure that those are good and up to date. But like now with technology, like you mentioned, you can you can
make them as detailed as they can possibly be, and I'm always adding to make them more detailed, right? So I'm going to make it based off my current understanding of the role, and then as I see things, because I think the best way in business is you can't ever expect yourself to know all the answers, right? But as situations come up, add it to the SOP. I really want the SOP to be something that someone with no knowledge can read and have a good understanding of what is the expectations, what is the role in its description, how we are going to judge whether they're doing a good job or not, and then incremental steps, what type of training they're going to be provided on the role. Should be like kind of their Bible when they first enter your practice for that role is this is what you're going to read first. So that way we feel like we've given you a good understanding.
And that's one of the first things I had my COO do. Honestly, I didn't know any of this prior to Alex. He's like, oh, look at what my COO just did and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, can you send me a copy? I need to do that. Like, that is genius. And it was instrumental in me leaving for maternity leave. And now I could hand over this Bible to this associate dentist or orthodontist. And there could be a frame of reference, because I don't want you texting me or calling me on my maternity leave. Refer to our handbook, because the information is in there of step by step. This leads to this, or this leads to this.
And look here first. If it's not there, ask.
Yes.
And say that. But look here first. And I do think it's really important, right? If you set the expectations very clearly there, you should have everything in there. Your values, you should have the expectations, you should have, good information, all the things that are unique to you. And even when you give these people these expectations, you should expect them to still mess it up, which is why having such good management, mid-level management is so important, because they are the ones who are going to determine whether or not your SOPs, which is your version of saying this is what we represent and what we expect to get done, is actually being fulfilled. I run into things all the time. I mean, I'm not perfect, but I see things all the time where I'm like, really? I thought the front was supposed to call people back within 5 minutes. They think they're supposed to call them back by the end of the day. So this is where training and revisiting these things and having good management who can catch, the sooner you can catch deviation from the SOP, the smaller your problem is going to become, especially when you're dealing with like something like financials or insurance or something like that.
So how do you guys manage like getting it as detailed as possible without making it 700 pages long?
Flowcharts.
Flowcharts are great. Yeah. I also think I use a lot of AI for it, and I'll write out things and tell it to rewrite it. And I'll say, write it in a way that someone with a high school education could understand, and have it rewrite it until I can read it and say, I think this is right. And then I also give it to the existing people there. And then it's a great way if you make a new SOP for your front desk. I did this on Thursday. Say, read this. Let me know, this is going to be for the next person we hire. What would you want me to add in here? Does anything not make sense? And then sharpen it. Every single time you hire a new person, go through it again and see if you can make it better.
Now, Alex, in your office, are you the one writing it down and then he's like making it look pretty, or how does that work in your office?
I made them all initially, and then now they just get refined. I don't do any of the formatting. I don't do any of that type of stuff.
Yeah,
but
same.
I will read it. And then what's really cool now is, so you can make what's called a custom GPT, which is like, essentially I'll have a front office, AI, then now they can ask questions to, and it'll know all the SOPs and respond to the questions. So because what I see with especially hiring new people is even if you tell them, hey, we have a culture of constantly asking questions, getting better every day, they will reach a point inevitably where they think, if I ask this question, I'm expected to know this, therefore I'm going to get in trouble, or I'm going to seem dumb, or something along those lines. So what's great if you can have a custom GPT with all these SOPs is they can ask the GPT a question about it, and then it's going to be able to give them an answer in privacy, and they're going to be able to self-learn and experience things and get into that. And if they don't have the answer, then they know that they consulted the right spot, and they can come feel good about asking someone else. But we are battling. This goes back to being very idealistic. We can give everyone everything, but a big part of what we're challenged with is the human element and the psychology associated with these people. How do you give them a really safe place to learn, be better, and ultimately make sure that they're doing what you actually expect them to do in your practice?
As we close out, I wanted to get into the subject of how do you guys determine what to pay the COO? Because we've talked a lot about that this role is an elevated pay scale, pay structure. I know, Dr. Ashley, you even mentioned that like you sacrificed some pay on your end to hire a COO in the beginning. So how did each of you, and I, we can start with whoever, but how did you guys determine that? And how do you come up with the pay, not only just the pay, but the overall compensation package?
So mine was, we did a base salary and, we negotiated back and forth about that. And then we had certain bonus metrics based off production and collections. And as the more I go through that, I think it's going to really depend on the individual, right? And I've toyed with all sorts of different configurations. I've thought about just giving them a percentage. Once we get to a certain level, just giving them a percentage of profit, because at the end of the day, if the production goes through the roof and our collections suck, there are ways where the numbers can always be kind of fudged. But, to me, I really want someone who's fully invested in the business being successful long-term. And that's always going to be represented by profit. So that's kind of where my head is currently, is thinking, how do I use profit as the grand all motivator? Because if they're in it long-term, then if the production's going up, the collections are going up, the profit's going to go up, and they're going to be directly tied to your success. The other thing with that is your interests are going to be 100% aligned. Do we expand? What do we do? It's going to affect you both. So how do you put the pay in a way where you're not going to be the only person taking a lot of risk? There's someone who's directly proportional to their compensation.
So I think that's all really great. You mentioned you hired your buddy out of, and I think I think like the profitability thing, but I'm thinking back to like, if I'm an orthodontist or a pediatric dentist listening to this, and I've never really considered a COO. And then you said like, not only is it your buddy, but also it's your buddy who is in a family office role, which, I mean, when you start getting into those kinds of businesses, you're talking about, in some cases, obscene amounts of money. Did your buddy have to take a pay cut to come work for you? Was he looking for a change too?
Yeah,
because I know it's not always about the money.
Yeah, for me, I definitely took a pay cut, and I was open to do it because I believe in the long-term vision of things.
Exactly.
For him, we structured it where it was kind of a lateral move for him with opportunity to grow. I know Ashley can touch on, the pay cut that her COO had to take, but this goes back to what people are really going to be attracted to is the dream. You got to sell them on the journey. You got to sell them on the opportunity, and you have to have the right person who is going to execute, because what you're hiring for this role is an executor. So a big part of the success here is going to be based off their execution of your vision and your organization of your vision to make sure that you're sequencing things in a way that are actually going to be successful. So there is, it's an ebb and flow. You both are responsible for the success of the business. And I think it depends on, the individual. Some people have a lifestyle that's going to be really, really hard to take the pay cut necessary. For me, money's not everything. I just love building things and growing. And I know that, I want to focus on my quality of life. I want to focus on making the practice better, offering a great service to our community. And so far, it's only resulted in, my pay going up. So I'm happy about it.
Ashley?
For me, I could really get into the weeds on this one. Our contract is extremely complex to protect myself as well as her. It was like a $15,000 contract. So there are all of these standards. She does get a piece of the pie if and when I sell. Or at a certain age mark. But there is criteria for her to be able to get that. So overhead has to be at a certain place. We're not there. So there's tons of things that protect me, and it's not just tied to production, because so easily, people are like, oh, well, when we're producing 5 million, you're making this. Okay, well, I can easily produce 5 million if I have 5 offices, but my overhead and my, none of that makes sense. So it has to be kind of tied more to profit, where your overhead is at. So we have a ton of standards built in to protect both of us, but make her feel like if she puts in the work and gets me to my end goal of where I want to be, like, you're going to be compensated too, because you helped me get to where I want. And I think we both have an end goal of wanting to be consultants and grow that side. And so, I think that it was easy to come and be attracted to what I was doing because I had already made a small name for myself within social media. And, it was a way up that she can start to do that in the future too. So, everyone has to start somewhere. So, and
I'll just caution against making parameters ultra complex because tracking going forward can be a real pain. You don't want to make this amazingly protective, an intricate structure that you have to then calculate monthly to determine their pay. That can be a real pain.
No, not like that. I'm talking about when we sell or when we hit that 10 year mark, and it's time that she gets her piece, that she got us there, that it wasn't something just because we have 15 locations and we're at a certain production.
I'm talking more of, people will say, all right, you're going to get this base pay. You're going to get a bonus based off collections. You're going to get a bonus structure based off production. And then you're cramming all these numbers and you have to make sure that the numbers are right. This is where I've just recently been toying with this idea of profit because it's so easy to track and it makes makes it completely proportional. There's always going to be, if you do it based off collections, there's baked in collections that are going to happen if you've been growing anyway, because the production's gone up over time and they're not really reflective of you being where you're going to go. You do it based off production. Well, they can, it's very easy to grow a business. They can say, all right, we're cutting prices. We're going to do this. We're going to give all these offers and we produced all this money. And then there's no money left on the table.
Exactly.
So they always say, your revenue is for your vanity and your profit is for your sanity. Right. Yeah. So I like the profit model just because they're going to be aligned with your interests.
I think you both hit on some really key points about it being about the personality and the relationship first, and them buying into the vision that you have for the business, because that's setting up a long-term relationship that isn't just about the money. And if you're gonna be in business together, you're gonna hit on hard times. And I don't necessarily mean everybody's going to be poor, but I mean, there's going to be some tough conversations. And so I think the way that you guys, the conversation that we've had today really shows the integrity that both of you have in working with your team and wanting to be a part of the solution and bringing in these people to be kind of partners in the business. Alex, it was wonderful to meet you. Thank you for the time that you've given to us. I know it's early in the morning there. So we really appreciate everything you had to chat with us today.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate you guys having me on. And, if anyone has questions, don't hesitate, reach out. I'm happy to help.
Absolutely. We'll have
thank you, Alex,
your information in the bio, at least your website and stuff like that. So great. Awesome. Well, Dr. Ashley, another great episode. Thanks for having Alex on with us today. And, until next time.
All right. Bye, guys.
Are you looking to grow practice revenue, improve patient retention, and enhance overall practice success in 2025? Join our faculty of leading practitioners, all experts in the crossover of orthodontics and pediatric dentistry, at one of 3 hands-on courses designed to equip orthodontists and pediatric dentists with essential knowledge and tools to establish and implement a successful Phase 1 bracket program to keep more patients in-house and grow your practice. Participants will be given a comprehensive roadmap to build a robust early treatment program and will be able to apply these strategies to their practice immediately. Whether you're looking to implement an early orthodontic treatment program for the first time or enhance your current offerings, this course provides the tools and knowledge to help you grow your practice and provide top quality care for younger patients. For more information on locations and dates, and to sign up, visit specialtyappliances.com/course/registration. Registration is open, and these in-office courses have limited space that will fill fast. So more information can be found again at specialtyappliances.com/course/registration.
Thank you for listening to the KiDDS Biz Podcast. We hope you gained valuable insights to elevate your practice. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a moment to leave us a review. It really helps us grow. Want to dive deeper into our community? Join the KiDDS Biz Facebook group for discussions, resources, and networking with fellow professionals. Until next time, keep striving for success in your ortho and pediatric practice.